Are you looking for new books to read? Do you like finding a new special author? Are you tired of the same old books from the same old authors? Well then, welcome to Discovered Wordsmiths, a podcast where you can hear from fantastic new authors. Join Stephen Schneider as he finds and talks to authors you may not know, but authors that have worked hard to write great new books. Hear about their book and why you should check it out. So sit back and listen to today's Discovered Wordsmith.
Today on Discovered Wordsmiths, I have Dave, who goes by J.D. Core. Is that correct?
J.D. or J. David Core on the writing, yeah.
Okay, great. Well, Dave, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Right before Thanksgiving for us.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, Dave, give everybody a little bit of background about you, some things you like to do, where you live, that type of thing, besides your writing.
Oh, okay. Well, I live in southeastern Ohio, which is like the most sparsely populated part of the state, basically. I enjoy mushroom hunting. I'm an avid mushroom hunter, and that actually plays into my story. And
nice.
you know, I write. I was a graphic. I went to school for graphic arts, so like I do my own covers and everything like that. And
great.
So I got background in that. Right now, I'm studying to be a school bus driver.
Okay.
Because everybody needs a little bit extra income, and they're short. Everywhere is short now, so there's
right.
I'm a grandfather. I have 4 grandchildren that are by blood, and a bunch of other grandchildren that are through marriage or my girlfriend's kids and etc.
Right.
So there's all kind of family. So that keeps me busy.
Nice. Great. Well, I live up by KSU.
Oh, okay.
About 8 miles out of KSU. So
yeah. I have a brother that lives up there in Wadsworth.
Okay. Yeah. I'm enjoying the nice freezing cold weather. It's been cold.
A little cold.
So, tell us a little bit why you wanted to start writing. I mean, a lot of times people are just out of school or something, but you're not. You've got grandkids.
Yeah.
So why do you want to write?
Well, my dad was an avid reader. He always had books in the house, and he always talked about wanting to write a book, and he never did. And so when I was in high school, I started writing a novel, just playing around with it, which will never see the light of day. It's what we call a trunk novel. It's never going to see the light of day. But I got hooked with it there, and I wanted to go to journalism school. Well, not journalism school, but creative writing school. And there was no money in it, so I didn't do that. But instead, I went to art school, which there's no money in that either. And then just through the years, I would write. I would write for the newspaper, or I would write for magazines or whatever. Just write a little story here and there and put them out and try to get them published. Got a few things published. Just never was able to shake the bug. So finally, a few years ago, when self-publishing became so much more respectable and easy to do, I started self-publishing some mystery novels that I had written, and from there just continued.
Nice. And what's the book that we're talking about?
Oh,
the name?
The book that we're talking about today is called Magnified and Sanctified, which is a
great title.
Thank you. It's from the Mourner's Kaddish, a Jewish prayer that they say when somebody has died at their funeral. Magnified and sanctified be his great name is the full line. And so the book, the premise of the book is about everybody in the Jewish religion, the idea of the taking God's name in vain is, and I'm not Jewish, by the way, but I have Jewish friends, and so the idea that taking God's name in vain gets to the point where, like, a lot of Jewish people who are like more Orthodox won't even write the word God; they write G-D. So you can't, you just don't speak of God. So the book though has the premise is that everybody, not just God, but everybody has a secret name, but the secret name isn't really a secret name; it's a sound that if you hear it, you can be controlled, like Rumpelstiltskin, or
Right, right.
or Beetlejuice, or Doctor Bombay. You're under the control thing, but the control is a loss of agency or zombification. So it's a zombie novel.
Okay. Uh, so you borrowed from the Jewish religion
Mm-hmm.
and you wrote a zombie novel.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? I mean, that is not a mashup I would immediately, and you're
No,
not even
I'm not
Jewish.
even Jewish, right? Yeah. Well, the idea for the book, I had watched a few zombie movies. I was never really like a person who was like really interested in zombies, and then I saw a few really good zombie movies that had a different twist on things, and I started watching The Walking Dead also around the same time. But the movies that I enjoyed were I don't know if you've ever heard of Pontypool.
No.
Yeah, it's a really good movie. And then Les Enfants, or The Revenant, which is a movie that's available on Netflix, I believe. And the other one was The Girl with All the Gifts. Which
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so in all of those books, it was zombieism, but it wasn't George Romero's zombies. It wasn't you're dead and then you're this virus or whatever.
That's a great thing. We can edit. So
Yeah, I had to do that a few times when I was doing the podcast too. Though. Either I would freeze or they would freeze, or
yeah, it
yeah.
happens. So you were talking about Memento and writing backwards and the problems you ran into doing that.
Right. So I did an outline where I started with the last chapter. I started with the last chapter, and then I moved backwards from the chapter just before, and then what would happen just before, and what would happen just before, and it was too much was being given away as you were reading backwards. You were learning too much about what happened before because of that. So it was like there was no point in reading to the beginning because so
Right.
I rearranged it so that it was the second to last chapter is the very first chapter, so then you find out how they got to there by going forward, and then in the last chapter you find out what happens after what you read in the first chapter. So, but it was a structural issue, and actually, I don't know if you know Jay Tanner. He's a fellow writer. He looked over my outline, and he's the one that like clued me into why it wasn't working. I knew,
Got it.
yeah, I knew it wasn't perfect, but I was like, this can be worked around. He says, no, you can't.
It was a nice thought. You wanted
Yeah.
to do it. I understand
Yeah.
that. I've done that myself.
Right. So what I did, I took this idea that I had for zombies, and then I took this idea that I had for the Memento thing, and I tried to do like put them together, and it didn't work out. But it did work out as a good zombie story. The zombie story, I think, actually works out pretty well, as far as like the idea of how the zombieism came about and why, everything, what led to what, worked out pretty well.
Nice. So, what made you want to write this particular book with zombies and all that?
Okay. Well, like a lot of people are asking me, was it the virus? Was it the epidemic? Was it the pandemic? Because you're living through this thing that's almost like a zombie plague, and it wasn't, and it wasn't the bath salts either.
We're not in Florida.
No. So all it was I just had an idea for for uh, this idea about people being controlled by a sound was the idea, and I could have written it as like a science fiction complete, just plain science fiction novel, but the idea of telling it as a post-apoc was more, which most zombie stories are post-apocalyptic. That just you know, uh, felt better to me. I don't know. I've been spending a lot of time in the woods, so
That sounds a bit like an X-Files episode almost.
does it? Okay.
Yeah, it does. It just sounds like it could be an X-Files. So what would you say is out there? What other books or movies or whatever would you say is similar to this?
Well, I mean, the Walking Dead, the whole premise of the Walking Dead, up in maybe the first season, was very similar to this. After that, when they started like rebuilding the community and everything, there's none of that in this. But if you've seen that, uh, um, the World War Z, there's a little bit, you could imagine a little bit World War Z in it, because it starts to spread over the world, and they're trying to, you know, it doesn't actually follow. It doesn't follow. The story doesn't follow directly, the like the government, what the government's doing or trying to do or wants to do. That's not really followed in the story, but the uh, uh, idea that that's happening behind the scenes is in there. So, but it really just follows two different survivor groups. One is actually a single person who's trapped in a, state park, and the other one is a, father and daughter who are trying to make their way, towards the ocean because the government has, promised that there are, offshore, sanctuaries, and so you have to get to the
Got it.
yeah because you have to get to the ocean, and they're trying to make it to the ocean.
Which sounds a little bit like Cormac's The Road, if you've ever read
Oh,
that.
you know what? I started to watch the movie version of that, but I couldn't get into it. But I see what you,
It's not for
yeah,
everybody.
yeah. But I see what you mean. I see what you mean, and I would actually probably enjoy reading it. I think I might have to try reading that one because,
It's different because I don't know if there's any punctuation and everything's in lowercase.
oh really?
So
Oh, so
yeah, it's weird in that regard. It looks like E. E.
yeah,
Cummings
I
or
was gonna say
something.
E. Cummings wrote a zombie book. Okay.
Right. Uh, so this is independently published, not traditional.
Right, it's independently published. I have published traditionally before, but I don't care for traditional publishing for myself. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it as far as a way to do it. If you can get a traditional publishing deal and you're happy with the fact that they're going to control everything from that point on, then that's fine. But I can't do that.
Right.
It's my baby, and I want to be in charge of
Right.
everything. I do my own covers, like I said, so I want to be in charge of everything.
Right. I understand. That's the same thoughts I've had. So what did you publish before traditionally?
Well, I worked for a humor magazine for a while, so I published through a magazine. And I worked for a newsletter company, so I published through them. I also wrote, a science fiction novel, which was one of the first things that I ever. Um, uh, it was like my second novel. My first novel, is that Trump novel that is never going to see the light of day. But the second novel was a science fiction novel, and the premise of that novel was, what if? And it came from a cartoon. It came from a Far Side, not a Far Side cartoon, a Life in Hell cartoon. If you remember Life in Hell
Okay.
with Binky
Yeah.
Bunny.
Yeah.
Okay, so it came from an old Life in Hell cartoon where there was multiple panels, and one of the panels it was like things kids say, and it was when cars wreck, do they feel pain, and stuff like that. Just questions kids would ask. And one of the questions was, what if everybody I know is a robot but me? And so, and so I wrote that novel.
Nice. Nice. Of course, then you got the opposite. What if you're the robot and don't know it?
Right. Well, yeah, that's exactly. Yeah.
Both sci-fi, good stories.
Yeah.
So what type of feedback have you been getting from people on this book? Because I know if I'd read a Jewish title taken from, if I have the knowledge of that, and then it's a zombie book, I'd be a little like, what the heck is this?
Right.
So what are people
Well,
saying?
nobody has actually commented on the title being like I used a prayer. I put the prayer where the line is from in an epigraph at the beginning of the book. So
Okay.
anybody who's read it has seen that epigraph, and nobody's commented on it. Nobody. They're just like.
Huh.
And originally, I'll tell you a little story. Originally, the title that I wanted was different. The original title that I wanted was, a line from, Ursula K. Le Guin. In one of her stories, she had this line. She said, "The name is the thing." And I thought that was a great title. The name is the thing. And so I was going to, make that the title and have an epigraph. But Ursula K. Le Guin's, not public domain yet. So I had to write to her estate. And they said, sure, you can use it for X amount of dollars. So I said, I'll just change the title.
Right. That I didn't know that quote from her. It sounds a lot like Rothfuss's Name of the Wind.
Oh, okay.
His first big book.
Oh, yeah. Well, this what she wrote wasn't a title. It was just a line from. It was a quote. It was in a quote.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. If you had a choice, Dave, would you rather see your book as a TV show or a movie?
I think it would work really well as a Netflix limited series.
Yeah, that seems to be really popular nowadays. Yeah. And isn't that crazy? Because when we were younger, TV movies sucked, and you only had TV shows that were a whole season. You didn't have you had mini series, which were only 2 or 3 nights. So totally different world that people want to have their stuff in streaming TV shows, essentially.
Yeah. The way I have the story broken down in chapters, actually, originally I released it as I wrote it in Vellum, in Vella.
Okay.
Which, in case anybody listening isn't aware of that, it's a new thing that Amazon is doing. That's and I know you talked about it with one of your people recently on one of your interviews, but it's serialized fiction. Yeah, the old Charles Dickens way. That's how Dickens released Christmas Carol. So I did release it in serialized form already, and as I released it that way, I realized that each of these, because you have to write when you're releasing serialized, you have to write contained chapters, like each chapter, right. And sometimes you have to write the next chapter in such a way that if you were just reading it as a novel, you wouldn't have to have this background again, but you kind of do when you're writing it serialized. So, but right. I knew I was going to release it as a novel, so I didn't want to go too heavy into that because I didn't want to have to edit it all back out. So it really plays well as a serialized piece, and it would make a really great TV series that way, because like each of the beginning parts of the chapters where I'm saying, like giving a little bit of information is like the in our last episode.
Right. Previously
on, yeah. Yeah.
So do you have any plans for sequels, series with this?
Well, yeah, what I'm working on right now is actually a companion piece to it, that the way that the story is set up, any other stories that are in the same universe would have to be concurrent. So they couldn't be like, and then this happened, or this happened before, because it starts right there at the beginning of the zombie apocalypse and it ends right there at the end of the zombie apocalypse. So there's no going forward and there's no going back. So, but there are things set up in this story that could be contemporary side stories, if that makes sense. So
yeah.
And so what I'm working on now is a concurrent novella that I'm going to use as a reader magnet.
Okay.
And a reader magnet, in case for anybody listening doesn't know what that is a story that you give away to people to try to draw them into your other writing.
Well, it's going to be a couple of weeks before this goes live. So if you get it done and send it over to me, I'll include a link to it or whatever you want.
Okay.
With the episode.
I don't know that it'll be done. I don't know if it'll be done that quickly, but I'm going to try, because it's the holidays. It's hard to actually find time to write.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah. All right. So Dave, tell us again the name of the book and where we can find it.
Right now it's in until December 31st. It's in pre-release. The story is called Magnified and Sanctified. So you can get it on Amazon in pre-release. You can get it. I've also released it through Smashwords in pre-release to all of the other locations. But it's going to be in KU when it comes out on the 31st, which is Kindle Unlimited. So anybody who's a subscriber to Kindle Unlimited will be able to get it for the 90-day period. And then anybody who wants to go to Amazon can buy it during that 90-day period. And then after that 90-day period, which puts it into like March, I think. March.
Right. Close.
Close. Yeah. It'll be wide. It'll be available everywhere. Barnes and Noble, Google, everywhere. But it'll be in pre-order now on all those sites.
Okay. Now we'll include some links. Do you have a website?
Yeah. My website is thrillsandmystery.com.
Okay. We'll make sure we get a link to that.
Yeah, which is the name of my old podcast.
Okay, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. So everybody, there's a quick sneak preview.
Yeah.
But before we get off of the author stuff, Dave, do you have some favorite books and authors that you could recommend?
Oh, favorite books and authors. I loved. See, like it's going to sound funny because I've been promoting the zombie story, but I'm more of a thriller reader than
Okay.
than a horror story reader, and I also like science fiction a lot. So my favorite authors have always been like Isaac Asimov, Dan Brown, Michael Crichton. There's Michael Crichton especially has a lot of science fiction and thriller
Yeah.
in his writing.
One of my favorites.
Yes, I also like Elmore Leonard a lot. More of the crime stuff than the Western stuff. Chandler, Rex Stout. Rex Stout is a favorite. I don't know. Are you familiar with Rex Stout? He wrote the Nero Wolfe novels.
Okay, yeah. I've recognized the name.
Yeah, because my mystery novel series is actually what they call pastiche of the Nero Wolfe novels, but the Nero Wolfe novels were pastiche of the Sherlock Holmes novels, and Sherlock Holmes was pastiche of Auguste Lupin. So
now we're really going back. And down where you live, do you have any favorite bookstores that you get to go to?
We don't have any bookstores here anymore. There's a bookstore across the river in Weirton that is they sell books, but they also sell comic books, and they sell candy, and they sell ice cream. So that's a fun place to go. But other than that, like I have to go all the way to Pittsburgh for bookstores. There is a like a used bookstore in downtown Steubenville, which is the county seat of Jefferson County where I live, and so there's that, but it's just old, moth-eaten, books that like thrift store books so if you like used bookstores, that's fine, and I do like used bookstores, but I like a used bookstore that also has like current releases in it. And that's not what that is.
Got it. Okay. All right. Well, before we finish up on talking about the book and move on to some author discussion, tell everybody why they should go out and get your book, or pull up their Kindle and get your book.
Well, it's if you like zombie stories, if you like science fiction, if you like post-apocalyptic, all of those things are going to be in there to please you. The premise of the story, the way I told the story, I keep it small, so it's not this grand world that you have to learn. It's only 60,000 words, so it's something you can read over a weekend. It would be a great summer read. It would be a great holiday gift. So it's the perfect zombie gift.
Great.
Gift for your zombie lover.
Yeah, that was wonderful. Great. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate that, telling us about the book. And hang on, because we're going to talk some author stuff.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to Discovered Wordsmiths. Come back next week and listen to another author discuss the road they've traveled, and maybe, sometime in the near future, it might be you.